to pick up where we are. But thanks everybody for joining today on this topic that's of interest. And we are being joined today by Richie Halali, and he's our representative with Fairway to present the Buy Before You Sell program. And as I had mentioned in the email that we sent out, we often hear from buyers who own homes and want to move that they do not want to have to sell their home with a tight inventory and then possibly not have a place to go right away. They don't like the uncertainty of, having to be in temporary housing and for how long, and are they going to find the right home? And so this program solves that issue, brings a solution to that for the people who, are going to qualify for this program. So having said that, I'm going to let Richie take over, and we are going to respect your time. We've got 30 minutes designated for this. We call it our 30-minute power session. And if people have questions at the end, we're willing to stay. But if you have to hop off, feel free to do that. We will be sending out the recording afterwards. So go ahead, Richie. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Leslie, for the introduction. And thank you both, Leslie and Richard, for having me on today to help just really spread the word about the Buy Before You Sell program. So hi, everybody. Again, my name is Richie. And I'm sure that many of you have heard of or have even used a Buy Before You Sell program. Maybe not with us, maybe somewhere else, or maybe you have used this one, But really, the whole point of this program is to put your clients in a position where they can move forward and purchase their new home now, while still working with you to get their old home sold, but of course, after the fact. Hence why we called it the Buy Before You Sell program. As you can tell, our marketing folks over here are geniuses in terms of what they decided to call things. We're a big fan of just getting straight to the point when it comes to programs like these. Okay, so just really in general, as we originally developed this program, we realized an issue that we were having was that more than half of the home buyers that we were working with at the time, this is about 5 years ago, and actually this still continues now, they're in a position where they have a reason why they need to move from one place to another. Maybe they're upgrading, maybe they're downgrading, maybe it's a new job and they have to move across the country. But it really, but this problem that folks normally have is, well, I want to buy a new home, but it's difficult to do so without selling their old home first. Okay, so in comes this Buy Before You Sell program. And the main things that it's really going to do is put you guys in a position where, well, number one, when you're making offers on a new home with your client, there's no more home sale contingency that you have to worry about. Once they're approved for this program and for the home loan through Leslie and Richard, it puts you in a position where you can move forward without the need of a home sale contingency, where your borrower can make a strong offer right when they need to for the perfect home. And then at that aside, they even get to, part of the program, really, it also puts them in a position where they can take funds that come from their old home to put towards the new one. So as a result, now the client qualifies for the new house with flying colors, okay? And they have the money that they need to actually make their down payment, pay closing costs if they have debt payoff, whatever the case is, to just really get things moving. But the whole point of the program is really just so that they can make that offer first, move into the new home, physically buy that house, then continue working with you to now get their old home sold. But the biggest benefit of that being, well, now the old home is vacant. Okay. So here's kind of like a little example of a sample transaction. I mean, I'll walk us through it just to make things a little bit easier. Okay. So in this example, step one, we have a departing residence approval. What this means is, of course, this is the client's old home. We're going to make the assumption that the client's old home is worth about $500,000. Let's say they owe about $250,000. Okay. Now, depending on how an approval works out, we could go relatively high in comparison to what the in comparison to what the home is worth. We'll normally go up to about 80%, but in this example, we're looking at 70%. So the way this works out, the home is worth 500,000. Our team said, look, we can approve this up to 350,000 minus the $250,000 the client owes on the home. Okay. So approval and those mechanics aside, in this example, this client is receiving $100,000 in bridge funds that they can use towards the new home purchase. Okay. They get to then move forward with you on making those offers without a home sale contingency. One of the biggest benefits is, this bridge that we provide, there is no interest on it, there is no payment on it. Okay. But it really just puts you in that position where now you can use those funds along with the loan approval to make that offer without the need of the home sale contingency. And once the client purchases and moves into the new home and you work with them to get the old home sold, the best part about all of this is that at the end of the day, you're receiving full commission for the services that you've rendered, not only for the new home that you've helped them purchase, but also for the sale of the old home in full. We're not here to try and take a portion of your commission. I know I've heard some companies do something similar to that. But that's not how this works. Okay. This just puts you in that position where you can help your borrowers move first, sell after the fact, while you're still earning your full commission. So at the end of the day, client moves into the new home. You work with them after the fact also to get the old home sold. And once it gets sold, client receives all of their equity. You receive all of your commission, like I mentioned. Okay. Program fee for the for the buy before you sell program, relatively reasonable given what it allows you to do. It comes out to only about 2.4% of what the old home sells for, or really a minimum of 9,000. As agents, of course, it's not necessarily something that you have to dive deep with these clients more than anything. It's just really about giving them the idea, especially when you realize, well, I have a client who wants to buy a home and sell a home. Well, chances are they're probably not going to qualify, for holding both homes. They're usually going to have to sell that old home first. So that's when the first thing you want to do is tell the client, I have an idea. I'm going to go ahead and get you referred over to Leslie and Richard's team. That way, we can figure out exactly what it is that you need. Who knows? Maybe the client only needs a home loan and doesn't need this program at all. But chances are they do need this program, and getting approved for it is just really going to put them in a position where it's easier for them to win when it comes to buying that new house. And it's going to make your job a heck of a lot easier when it comes to selling the old one. Okay. Now, program is available virtually everywhere. Okay. And the reason why I like to just bring this slide up is just really as an example where, what if you happen to have a client that is buying, but they're coming from a different state, maybe from a partner agent, maybe from a referral that you received elsewhere. The good news is we can still work with that. What if you have a client moving in from Idaho? We don't expect you necessarily to list and sell the home in Idaho unless you're licensed and would like to. But if you have a partner agent elsewhere, and you have a client moving halfway across the country, they can still, as a group together, we can still use this program to make the client's job a heck of a lot easier when it comes to, that big move of buying and selling. Okay. Um, Its property requirements typically is what I'll show for loan officers, but it's just nice to know that just generally speaking, okay, the program itself is of course available when it comes to house, condos, townhomes, okay. There are going to be some restrictions, especially if there's like a leasehold or something like that. But for the most part, I would say this isn't even something that you have to worry about because at the end of the day, just go ahead and get the information over to Leslie and team. And then we'll be able to figure out very quickly, typically in about 24 hours or less, okay, if this is a property we can work with and how much money we can provide to the client, okay? So just kind of the overall high level really just is what is the program cost? Well, 2.4% of what the old home sells for when it sells. Aside from that, we're not charging the client any interest. We're not having them make payments to us or anything like that. It's just as simple as 2.4% of what the old home sells for when it sells. Okay. And then more than anything, it puts Leslie and team in a position where now the client can use funds from their old home while still being able to qualify for the new one. The secret over there really is that, well, Leslie and team don't have to count the client's old home against their income. Really just that simple when they're using this program. Okay. So that's why it puts you in that spot where you can move forward, buy first, sell after. And I mean, for the most part, as far as the program goes, it is relatively simple, and that's pretty much it. You know, The program is just really designed to put you in that position where you can be the hero for your client, you know. Um, let's see. Any questions so far, by the way? I know it's been a little quiet, you know, and I know I've been talking a lot. But just wanted to get a gauge on what folks are thinking about. Because oftentimes when I present this program, especially when we're talking to agents, I get all the hard questions. So I've been prepared for it and I'm ready for it.
So I think everybody's automatically muted when you join, but you should have the ability to unmute yourself if you have questions.
I'm a little surprised by the cost. Taking your example, they borrowed $100,000 from you. They're going to be paying $12,000 back.
That's correct.
That amounts to 12.5% interest on the loan for the time they have it.
Yes, sir. That's correct. You know, these programs
they better want a home really badly and not be able to afford to buy it because this loan is expensive.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right. This isn't this isn't free. This isn't like, as cheap as a home loan was, back in 2021 and 2022 for obvious reasons. But at the end of the day, this is a private money program, hence why the cost is there. But one thing to think about at least is let's put it this way. In that example, let's go back to it just so everybody can see. Dwight's saying, well, if this client's house ends up selling for $500,000, okay, and the fee is 2.4% of what the home sells for, and the fee for the program for this particular example is $12,000. But at the end of the day, the client is only receiving about $100,000 of their equity up front, okay? And you're right, Dwight, it is expensive, but at the same time, three main things that I want you to think about. Especially if you happen to think of a client that might be a good fit for this program. Number one, well, it's going to put you in a position where you get to make the offer on the new home without the need of a home sale contingency. Now, depending on different markets, I hear agents tell me, well, if I have to make an offer for somebody and they happen to have a home sale contingency, I'm usually going to have to make that offer 1 to 2% higher, assuming there are other folks that are going to be competing for this home that don't necessarily have this contingency. Now, it's the same thing, number two, the same thing on the other side. And by that, I mean on the client's old home, where I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that most agents feel a heck of a lot more comfortable when they're listing and selling a home if the client is able to vacate the property. Maybe you prefer to sell a home vacant. Maybe you prefer it to be staged. But I'm pretty sure that you probably prefer that your client to actually be out of the house when it comes to selling it versus having them there. Not to say that you're not gonna list their home if they stay there. But same thing with agents that I talk to all across the country. They'll typically tell me that assuming the home is vacant and or staged, that'll put them in a position where they're likely going to be able to sell the home for about 1 to 2% higher. So let's say it's 1% help on buying the house and 1% help on selling the home. I mean, at that point, when you really think about it, the program is almost paying for itself in full. Okay. Now, the third point of that being convenience. Okay. And by convenience, I mean, oftentimes in hot markets, a borrower or a client is going to be in a better position if they sell their old home first, so that they can make offers without a home sale contingency. And that's assuming that programs like this don't exist. Okay. Now, the issue with somebody saying, well, okay, maybe I'll just sell my home first. Great. So now you've sold your home as a client. Well, now where are you going to live? Well, chances are they're going to have to move. Maybe they're going to, hang out with family for a little bit, live out of boxes.
Why don't you catch me some other time? Thanks.
Or maybe they're going to be in a temporary rental that they may have to pay for, So Dwight, you're right. The program is not free for obvious reasons. It is more expensive than a standard home loan. And that's because it is a private money loan. But, it just kind of depends how you use the program and who the client is. You might have a client that says, I don't care. I don't want to do any of this. I want to do everything traditionally. No problem.
I can definitely see it having some utility for some people, but a lot of people with $250,000 in equity would be better off borrowing from the house that they already own, that $100,000, and
right.
they'd have a cheaper interest rate.
So let me just jump in here real quick, Dwight, to your point. So when we are talking with buyers, the first thing Richard and I do is look to see if they can qualify carrying their existing mortgage, the new mortgage, and if they can take a HELOC or some other type of second trust out. If they can carry all of those three payments, which is the way we would do it traditionally, we're doing that with them. This program would then, if they can't, and there are many people who can't qualify for all those three payments, then we're going to be looking at this program, Buy Before You Sell, to help them get to their next stage in life. So to your point, that's exactly right. Do the HELOC, do whatever to extract the equity. We're not going to this program first, but it's really for those who want to be able to, they might have small children. They don't want to move. They don't have family, let's say. They're going to spend 2, maybe 3 months, possibly longer in our market with tight inventory, that they're going to have to pay rent on. So for instance, if they were paying $2,500 a month in rent for temporary housing, you're already close, getting up there. And then you're going to have some storage fees if they have furniture to store. So the expenses start to accumulate. And to Richie's point, convenience, obviously, if they don't want to be displaced out of their home with the unknown. So it just allows them to free up and say, okay, there's a cost, but there's a cost to getting us to the next place in our life where we want to take our family. So, and it's not going to be for everybody, to your point, but that's why we wanted to show you this, so that there is a plan, a backup plan. If you do have clients that really, really want to move, they've outgrown their home, they're having more kids, whatever it might be, want to get into a different school district, whatever, that this would come in and be a solution for something like that.
Yeah. And one thing to keep in mind, another thing to keep in mind about this program, Dwight, which I think you'll like, we can get somebody approved for this program. Okay. They can work with Leslie and team on the home loan, of course, and this program, put you in a position where, sure, you can move forward, make offers and all that fun stuff. Now, as far as our requirements go for when to list the old home, well, we can work with you on this program. Let's say if the client's home is already listed, or if you're going to list it very soon. Some people who use this program may list their old home before they actually buy the new one. And some people who use this program might not bother listing the old home until they've purchased the new one. Those are really the two different types of folks that I like to say use this program. The ones who are saying, you know what, I like this, I'm going to commit to this, let's just actually buy before we sell, versus the other folks who are probably going to still try to get their old home sold first. One of the greatest things about this program is that anytime we're working with you or anybody else on this, you, the client, Leslie's team, have absolutely nothing to lose. Okay. So you can still keep the client's old home listed. You could even make the offer with no home sale contingency, assuming that the client's probably going to close on the program with us. But what if it ends up that, as a result of your hard work, now the client's old home is now pending sale and you don't need to use this program anymore? Well, the good news is you guys get to cancel on it. And there's no best efforts fee. There's no cancellation fee or anything like that. So for the sake of the program, it really is, absolutely nothing to lose. You get approved for it, you can use it, even just the benefit of being able to make those offers and getting an offer on a new home accepted without the need of a home sale contingency. And then now it's kind of like for the sake of the client, we'll see what happens. Maybe their old home sells first. If it does, great, we cancel on us just for the sake of this buy before you sell. It's as if it never even happened in the first place. Great.
Any questions so far? If so, just take yourself off of mute and go ahead and chime in. Richie,
I'm just gonna
go ahead, Kathy.
I was just gonna chime in. We're discussing this for some of my clients, and they're looking at spending 1.5, 1.6 in the competitive market of the Brambleton, Willowsford area. And they have a $700,000 townhome to sell in Brambleton, and they do not want to put it on the market till they found what they've going for. So, the 2.5% on that 700,000 is not a big impact when we're looking at bidding on these homes where we're going over ask. If they're looking at, I don't know, 18,000. I've been doing it off 3% in my mind, thinking it would cost them 21,000 to use the program. But we've actually bid on a couple of houses that we haven't ended up winning because of the home sale stuff. And they were bidding, $50,000 and $75,000 over. So we're looking at next time around going for this, and in the end, the cost that's going to get them the house that they want is really not expensive.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No. And thanks for sharing. And you're right, because I mean, it's it does really come down sometimes to who the borrower is, what kind of price point they're in. But where we found the most success with this program are folks that are, in that position where oftentimes they're upgrading, they're at that point in their life where they're ready to do that. And especially if they're going to be heading into, into a competitive market, just like you said. Now, Kathy, with these particular clients, were they able to close eventually on the new place, or are you guys still kind of shopping around and figuring it out?
We're still shopping. Yeah. So, but Leslie and Richard have presented this opportunity, and I think you'll be hearing from us soon.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a little. I will say, honestly, the cost at first put them off, but then when we started running numbers and talking about their goals, as Leslie mentioned before, the expenses of potentially having to move twice, do temporary housing, then looking at what we were spending on the other side, and to be able to go home sale contingent is a huge win. It's going to get them the house, but to go without the home sale contingency will put them in a position to actually win the house that they want in a competitive situation. And if we're talking about throwing $50,000 to $100,000 above a list price to win, suddenly using this to set us apart becomes a much more reasonable tool. So
Yeah,
I think it's a good program. It's
yeah. No, and you're right.
I won't
Yeah,
lie. You sit down and do the math. You go, oh, I don't know that I want, but it gets you your dream. And I suppose with my clients, because they're looking at
yeah, and you're right.
the whole transaction. It's minute.
Yeah. And of course, the next time you happen to talk to your client, because I know that, we haven't had them submit it over yet, and they're definitely thinking about it. But just remind them it's absolutely nothing to lose, because on our side, just at least for the sake of this program, usually in about 24 hours or less, we'll have an approval ready. And then it's up to you guys and the client. They want to use it, it's available, they don't want to, or like I was saying earlier, maybe they think they're going to use the program, and at the end they don't need it. Cancel as if it never happened. The client still gets to buy the new house, but at least they got to save a little bit of money and kind of experience the benefit of the program, sometimes actually without even paying for it, which is kind of nice. Yeah.
That's
And
amazing, but there's no upfront cost.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. So with me, I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I just have a small dog, and he's been kind of like walking around a little bit over here. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the last time that I moved a couple years ago, I used our program. Not because I work here, not because, and to be clear, I don't even get an employee discount on the program. But the reason why I decided to use the program more than anything for me was the convenience portion of it, because, just like I'm sure all of you, we're working all day, every day, and especially if you're in this business, then you're also going to treat yourself as your own client and work with, at least in my case, for my agent partners over, with some of my agent partners over here. I just didn't even have time during a normal day, to figure out how I'm going to move, from my old place into the new one, knowing that, well, I do need to sell a home and buy a home. So I use our program more than anything just for the sake of convenience, not to prove anything. And I got to tell you, it was probably the best experience I've ever had buying and selling a home, you know, because all I had to do, I didn't have to worry about packing. I didn't have to worry about my agent calling me every couple of days and saying, good news, I have somebody who wants to see the home at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday when I'm probably already at work. Now I have to rush home, pick up the dog, make sure everything is clean. For me, it was more about, okay, I'm going to spend the weekend working with my agent to move forward, find the place that I'm going to buy, figure out where I'm going to move, and actually make all of that happen. And then I was totally out of my old place. Old place, nicely staged. Everything went well. I didn't have to think about anything on the old home. Really, the only time that I really had to talk to my agent was when they got to tell me, good news, we have 6 offers. Let's sit down and review them. So it kind of even felt like, even though, I've been in this business for over 20 years, but it felt like for the first time that even I felt like I was getting taken care of. It felt almost like a concierge service, which was really cool. Yeah. Oh,
Right.
Dwight, hand up.
Yeah, one place I could really see this being useful is in one of my other specialties, divorce, where you've got people that absolutely need to sell and move on with their lives. And they're both they've got to sell the house and they're both looking for a new place to live.
Yep, you're right. You're right, actually. We get a call at least several times a day about borrowers who are getting a divorce and they need to sell. And sometimes and Dwight, I'm sure you have a heck of a lot more experience on this subject than I do, but oftentimes in a divorce, at least what we've seen is you have one of the clients who says, look, I just want the money and I want to move on. And you have another client that says, yeah, that's great. I want the money too, but I want to take advantage of the market and buy something immediately, So even in the case of a divorce, if you have clients that want to use this program, we'll work with you guys to make sure that everything works well. So essentially it would be, for example, hey, this is what they are approved for. Now these clients can use it as they see fit. It could be a situation where you have both of those clients moving forward and both buying their own homes at the same time. Or it could be a situation where only one of them is going to buy a new home. Okay. And the other one just wants their money. And no matter what, well, good news is they'll be able to buy the house and they'll be able to get their money. They can, divide it up however they see fit, or whatever or however they've agreed to do so. But it does work well for those folks, especially obviously if at least one of them really wants to buy a new home, if that's the main thing that they want to do.
So we are at 10:30. Does anybody have any questions they want to get in? Obviously, feel free to leave at this time, so we are respecting your time. I do have one follow-up question if nobody else has a question, but again, feel free to leave if you have to run. Anybody? Just chime in.
I do. It's Kathy. What's the time period to get them home sold from once you settle on your new house if you're using the program?
Good question. So you'll notice that over here under step 4 on the slide, sell at full market value for the sake of the old home. There is a timeline in here, but let me give you the very short version of this. The answer is, technically speaking, you have all the time in the world to sell the home. If you were to ask me, can my client use this program? What if it theoretically took them 10 years to sell the house? Well, then it took them 10 years to sell the house. That's when you're getting your commission.
Oh, wow.
That's also when we're charging our 2.4% fee. But you'll also note that right over here, it does say, list and sell the home at full market value within 120 days. So here's what happens. Let's say client buys the new home today. Today is day 0. We do expect you guys at that point to get the old home sold within the next 120 days or 4 months. That's what we want. I'm sure you guys want that too. Quick sales at high prices are always good. And clients would like that too. So we're all on the same side when it comes to let's get the home sold at the best price possible, but also pretty quickly. It doesn't need to be a fire sale to sell it tomorrow. Enough where you can sell the home for a fair price. Okay. Now, if we approach 120 days, which is extremely rare, we actually are required to purchase the home. Okay. And the reason for that is when we're doing this program for somebody, we do have to come in with a guaranteed purchase offer on the client's old home. That is the exact mechanic that allows Leslie and team to get this borrower or this client moving forward without having to count the old home against the client's income. Okay. So our promise to purchase the home is really what puts them in a position where now they actually qualify for the new home loan. To be clear, we do not want to buy anybody's house, but if we do, we buy it, we hold it. And then Kathy, we go straight back to you and the client and we say, okay, we bought the house. That's on us. We're going to hold it. You guys go ahead and continue selling the house. And like I said, not that we want it to take you 10 years to sell the home, but theoretically, if it took 10 years or even 100 years to sell the home, as soon as it's sold, that's when our fee is charged. Obviously, also when the client's receiving the remainder of their proceeds and when you would be receiving your commission. Does that make sense? Oh, sorry.
Richie, go ahead.
Yes,
Kathy.
thank you.
So
Thank
Richie,
you.
can you explain, let's say it would be rare that 120 days would go by in our market where somebody would not sell their home, but let's just say it does. Who's paying the mortgage payment? And then if you all take it over in 120 days, who's paying to keep that loan going? And then are those funds subtracted from what the buyer receives in equity in the end?
Good question. So for the first 120 days, and remember that timeline starts the day the client purchases the new home. That's day 0, and then the next 4 months. So at that point, all we've done, at least on our side, is we've placed the backup offer on the client's old home. Not that we want to purchase it, but of course. And we've provided the bridge. In this example, at least, this $100,000. Now, there is no payment on this $100,000 and there is no interest on this $100,000, but the client during this 120-day time period still owns their old home. We have not paid off their first mortgage. So to your point, Leslie, for those 4 months, they would still be responsible for making their normal mortgage payment for either 120 days or until the home sells, whichever one happens first. And to that point, in this example, this bridge of 100,000, or for whomever the client is, however much they're receiving, you guys get to work with the client to then decide how that money gets used. Maybe all of it goes towards the new home. Maybe the client decides to keep some of it for one reason or another, moving expenses. Maybe they prefer to keep some of those funds in their pocket on the off chance they have to make, mortgage payments on the old home for up to the next 4 months. Okay. Now, if we do happen to reach those 120 days, which the good news for everybody is it is rare, but if we do, when we purchase the client's home and we technically take ownership, we would be paying off any mortgage the client has outstanding. So now we're holding the home. There's no longer a mortgage against it. So the nice thing is there's nothing for us to subtract later on. So really what happens is, let's say we buy the house, then eventually it sells. Great. Our fee is still the 2.4%. The only other items that would be subtracted out of the numbers would be reasonable, normal ownership expenses. Easy example. If we own somebody's home for 2 months, well, we damn well better make sure that the home is insured. God forbid anything were to happen to it. So we're going to place insurance on it. Our insurance comes out to about $150, maybe $200 a month, depending on the home. So if we've owned this home on paper, at least for an entire month before it was actually sold, well, the good news is client didn't have a mortgage for that month because we bought it and we paid it off, but we did incur an expense for the homeowner's insurance of $150. So later on when the property sells, it'll be, all right, client, fee is 2.4%. We take it from their proceeds along with, let's say, the cost of that insurance, you know. Same thing for water and power. Oftentimes clients say, it's fine, I'll keep the utilities in my name. We say, no problem. Sometimes clients say, hey guys, you know, given that you technically own the house, do you mind paying the water bill for us or the landscaper? You know, and the answer is, yeah, we're happy to. No problem. We want to make sure the property still looks good. We want to also make sure that if anybody comes to see the home, of course, the water and power work for obvious reasons. So if the client wants us to cover these expenses, we absolutely will. There's no extra cost for it. It's dollar for dollar. So if we paid a water power bill for, I don't know, $80, well, it's $80 because it's the same thing that the client would be responsible for had they still owned the home, you know. So that's why I say ownership expenses and reasonable, but the point being, we don't charge anything extra. You know, it's just whatever the borrower's cost would have been in the first place is exactly what it's going to be.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank
Richie,
you.
I had a question. Unless someone else in the group does, I'll give everybody else a chance. Okay. Is there a scenario where maybe the client does not need an equity unlock? They just need the home sale contingency removed. And what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. So, you know, yes, the way that we've presented the program so far, it provides really two main things to the borrower, like you said. One being an equity unlock, which is their bridge. The second being our backup offer on the client's old home, which is exactly what allows Richard and Leslie to qualify the client and pretend that the old home has already been sold for the sake of doing a home loan. In the case where you have a client that doesn't want, doesn't need, or the bridge part of it, and they only want to use the program for the sake of the equity unlock, the answer is yes. They can still use the program, and the biggest benefit being it ends up becoming discounted. So instead of a normal fee of 2.4%, if the client only needs to use the program for the sake of our backup to qualify, the program fee comes out a heck of a lot cheaper. It comes out to 1.5% instead, you know. So really the easy way to think of that, of course, is if the client needs money and help on the home loan, 2.4%. If they have the money and they don't need the money from us, just in general, and they only need the help on the home loan, then it would be 1.5%. And in both cases, same thing, absolutely nothing to lose. So if at the end of the day it ends up the client no longer needs the program as they're closing on the new home, in any case, you still get to cancel. Nobody has anything to lose. You don't use the program, nobody pays for it.
Desiree, you had a question. You just need to unmute.
What if, because here in step 4, selling at full market value, what if you now own the property and you have to do a price drop to sell it? So, because I'm assuming you're buying it at a certain amount, right? But if you're taking a loss on the back end because you can't sell it yourself, how does that impact the seller?
Good question. So at the end of the day, the choice of or the decisions being made in terms of what it's being listed for, of course, is going to be between you and the borrower to decide. Mainly you, because you're the one who knows what the heck is going on in the market, regardless of what the borrower feels their property might be worth, if you know what I mean. Now, even in the now let's say we do get to that point, which is extremely rare, to be clear. This happens to us less than 2% of the time, where we have to purchase the client's home. Okay, but to that point, if we do, we're not buying the house to then try and make like some extra profit or anything like that. So let's say we get to the 120 days. So Desiree, my team over here would be working directly with you at this point, and it would be, for whatever reason, old home is not yet sold. I'm sure between the beginning of when you listed the home up until those 120 days, and let's assume that it's this $500,000 home, we're assuming that you've probably worked with the client and probably at that point have done some sort of price reduction, whatever it might have been, okay? But whether you have or haven't, it doesn't matter, because when it comes to 120 days, my team's gonna call you, Desiree, and say, hey, Desiree, listen, we're at that point in the program where unfortunately for us, we have to buy the house. How much do you want us to buy it for, okay? And the reason why we ask that question is because we don't want to buy this house on paper for, $300,000, let's say, just to save like, a couple of dollars, because that'll cause a problem with you later on. Well, sorry, it would be a problem for you later on when you're still trying to sell the home, and you're going to have to explain to a bunch of agents why yesterday a company bought it for a fraction of what it's actually worth. So Desiree, you would probably tell our team, listen, we need to sell this home for $500,000. I need you to buy it for at least 500. So on that day, when we buy the home for 500, it's not game over. So we're not earning our funds. We're not paying ourselves. The client is not yet receiving their proceeds, nor are you receiving your commission, at least not yet. All of that's just going to be held up in closing. It's just really going to be held up in escrow, just waiting. So that way we're not in a position where now we're going to say, oh, well, now we have to make price reductions and we're the ones selling it. Because at the end of the day, even if we own the home, we're going to turn around back to you, Desiree, and say, well, now we own the home. Continue working with the borrower, with your client, really just to get the home sold. So if you feel that it's necessary to do a price reduction, you're going to, now that at least we officially own the home, technically, we would have that conversation together where you might say, listen, I think we need to do a price reduction. I want to drop it to, I don't know, 480, for example, then our team would say, hey, Desiree, if that's what you feel that you need to do, go for it. We're going to support you no matter what. You're the expert for us, and you're the one that's essentially calling the shots. But at the end of the day, as offers continue to come in on the home, let's say we own it. Let's say someone offers 450. You're not necessarily coming to us and saying, okay, we got an offer for the client's home at 450. What do you want me to do? Instead, you're going to do what you would normally do. You would tell your client, listen, we got an offer for 450. You might give them your professional opinion, and then it's still going to be up to the clients. They want to take the offer, they can take it. If they don't want to take the offer, they can decline it,
So how does that impact? So let's say it's at 450 now. How does that impact that 100K equity that was unlocked in order to buy the other house?
Yeah, it doesn't, because at that point we had already funded this 100,000. It's already towards the new home. So after the fact, if let's say you expect to sell the home, you expect to have the home sold for 500,000, but to this point, well, for whatever reason, it only sold for 450,000. It just really means that, well, the fee is going to be a tiny bit cheaper, because remember, our fee is based on what it sells for. Same with your commission. And the borrower, really the client, is just going to receive less proceeds because they decided to sell the home for a little bit less. So the good news is not going to impact the 100,000 that was already there. Now, actually, in an extreme scenario, which I think you would like, at least to hear how it would work. So in this case, we said client's mortgage balance was 250. We gave them an equity unlock of 100. So technically, at the moment, this person owes $350,000 total against their old house. Well, what if, I don't know, the worst of the worst case scenario happens and property values tank so much that now this home that was supposed to sell for 500 can't even sell for $300,000. Now, we're not going to force you to keep that home on the market forever for then, 5 years later for it to actually get its value back. But let's say it gets to that point, and you have no choice but to really just tell us, look, guys, I hate to say it, but this home isn't even going to sell for 300 if we're lucky. And that's the offer that we have. And, we don't really have a choice and everyone has to move forward. So be it. You sell it for the 300,000. You still earn your full commission. We take the loss on the difference there, So in that case, if let's say that client's home were to sell for $200,000 less, well, the client's not going to receive more proceeds because there are no more proceeds, but you would still receive your full commission. The program fee would be heavily discounted as a result of that, and we would take the loss on it. We would not go back to the client and say, well, you still owe us like another 50 grand. For us, it would just be a total loss. It is what it is. But everything is still fair on of course, on your side and your client's side.
I guess that's also why you're only allowing them to borrow up to maybe 70 to 80% of the home's value.
Yeah.
So you're giving yourself, you're not doing a 100% bridge loan, which would put the client in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're right, Richard. That's why that margin is there, just to have a little bit of room in case, let's say, oh no, the market fluctuated. It's going to sell for a number that's, you know, a little bit lower than expected. Not that we expect that for obvious reasons, but it's there to help, you know. Yeah, and really, at the end of the day, we're all on the same side because we want the same thing that you guys want, which is, like I was saying before, the quick sale at the highest price possible. You know, the faster the property sells, the sooner, at least on our side, we receive our funds back along with the program fee, and the sooner you guys receive your commissions as well.
Great. Well, I think that brings us to the end. This has been super helpful, and thank you so much, Richie, for explaining everything so well. For those still remaining, just keep your eyes out. Richard and I next month, we're going to be doing a power session with some self-employed, some creative ways to qualify self-employed buyers that are not the traditional ways that we would use with tax returns. So we'll be bringing that to you. So be on the lookout for that as well. Okay. Thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thanks,
much.
Richie.
Thanks, everyone.